Hello artist friends, we are going to create a masterpiece of Andy Warhol's Campbell soup can. The materials you're going to need today are a piece of white paper. You don't want to use construction paper because we will be using water. So you want a nice piece of heavy art paper, a Sharpie to draw with. There's one little part on our lettering that you're going to need a pencil and an eraser. And then when we get to the let's color part, we'll be using watercolor pencils. And instead of a brush, I prefer using Q-tips and a little bit of water in a jar or a cup. So those are the things that you're going to need before we start. And today on this masterpiece, this is kind of interesting because this piece is more like, we're going to be a designer today. So there's artists, there's fine artists, and there's designers. And even though they're both artists, designing is a little bit different. So we're worried about composition, and you'll notice this is simpler. There's not a lot of stuff in the background. So graphic designers think about what's the simplest way we can convey a message. So we have a really simple background, and we're doing a realistic drawing of a Campbell soup can, and we're focusing on colors and how they pop out. Today I'm going to teach you how to do fancy block lettering, and that's something that a designer would do. So if you are ready, then let's begin. Okay, so first we're going to draw with our Sharpie, and we're going to start right up here on the top of the can. And on this can, my favorite part about this can is the reflections in the tin. So we're going to draw a series of ellipses, and that's just a smushed circle. So let's start off by drawing the top circle, get our Sharpie, and kind of try to draw in the middle of the page. Now, don't worry too much about the edges because when we're done, we're actually going to cut this out and mount it on another piece of paper. Okay, so we have our first ellipse, and now I just want to draw the edge of the can. So I'm going to start on the right curve, and I'm going to draw a line that's the same distance as a can, and then end on this curve. So that's our outside lip. Okay, and now let's draw the inside top lip. So it's almost the same thing. This is nice, just a little trick so that we can see the front and the inside of the can at the same time. So I started in the same place, just did that on the top. Now we're going to do these ellipses. I'm going to start right here in the middle and draw the first one. And then as I draw another line around that for my reflections, I'm going to make it thicker on the sides. When I come to the top, look how thin I'm making it. Let's try another one. So see how many you can fit on. If you can only fit on 2, that's fine. But we're going to try to fit on 3. So again, I made it thicker and thinner at the top. Let's do it once more. So one more line, I can fit 3. And I'm going to go thick, and then thick. Okay, now let's draw our only straight lines in the whole painting, the sides of our can. And I'm going to stop a little bit below the bottom so that we can add that bottom of the can. So let's start. Notice that the line doesn't start on the edge, it starts a little bit in. That's the thing about being an artist, is really just looking before you draw. So many times we think, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. But if we would just look a little closer, we could get things really realistic. Okay, now down here, to connect these, we need a curved line because this soup can is a cylinder. So I've got a curved line, and then we need this little bit of a larger lip of the can. So I'm going to start here and curve around, and I'm keeping it about the same distance as I go around. There. Okay. Now for the favorite part is the reflections. This is what's really going to take this, it's going to make it look realistic because we're going to add reflections in the tin. So we are actually just going to draw some lines and then color in some of the shapes. So I'm just going to come in here, and I'm just going to draw some random lines. And I'm going to do it up here too. And down here. Notice how I'm just curving those just a little bit. I love how the reflection is that. Okay, now that I've drawn those lines, I'm going to choose some of them to color in dark. So I kind of like leaving the 2 little lines like that white, kind of shows that, helps show that that's a highlight where the light is hitting the middle. So I want you to just take your Sharpie and fill in some of these lines. Let's do the same thing just down here on this edge. So we want to leave quite a bit of white space in the middle. So start your lines out here more towards the edges. And then just color in. I'm going to try to hold my table nice and still for you, but it's kind of moving all over the place. All right. Okay, and then you can take a look and see. All right, now we've got a reflective can. Okay, I'm liking how it's looking. All right, now this is the part where you're going to use a pencil. What I want to do is just a couple guidelines for our lettering, and then we're going to trace them with Sharpie and erase our guidelines. So this pencil won't show up for you to see on camera. So I'm going to use a red Sharpie, and I want you to remember that my red Sharpie equals your pencil. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is do a couple of guidelines where our lettering is and this middle line of the can. So the first thing I'm going to do is eyeball where the middle would be. And remember that our lines need to be curved. So I'm going to draw the curved line for the middle. I'm going to draw a curved line here where I'm going to write the soup. Now, I love tomato soup, so I'm going to make mine tomato. If you want to change the name to a soup that you like better, you can. You'll just have to kind of account for how big of it. If you're doing chicken noodle, it's a lot more letters than tomato, so you have to write smaller. But you can choose that. So then I've got my soup line. Up here we need our line for Campbell's. Okay, and you can write condensed if you want to. Right here in the middle, we've got this seal. And on Warhol's artwork, it's really hard to actually see what it is. If you want to, you can go in your pantry, and if you have a can of Campbell's soup, you can copy the symbol there, or you could totally make up your own symbol. So I think that's really fun. That's what I usually have the artists in the classroom do, is just make up something themselves. Okay, now for the lettering, the way that we're going to do this lettering is we're going to write our letters just nice and thin with spaced apart for all of these words first. Then we'll go around them and make block letters. So the first thing you're going to do is come up here and write Campbell's. C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L''S. So I've just wrote it thin, and I'll come back and make that fancy in a minute. Okay, now let's come down here to tomato. So tomato is all caps, and we want to kind of spread it out. And I first am just going to write the letters. Then in a minute, I'll show you how we trace over them and turn them into block letters. So this is exciting. So not only are you learning about watercolor pencils and pop art, but you're also learning creative lettering. Okay, and then soup. Now notice that soup is bigger than tomato, so let's just spread that out just a little bit more than tomato so that it's nice and big. Okay, we have one last line here. These little symbols right here are called fleur-de-lis. They are like a little French symbol. You can draw a fleur-de-lis pattern across the bottom, across that line, or you can do any other kind of pattern you would like. So that's something you can do on your own. Here's one other line at the top here, and I'm just going to put that in just so that I remember. Okay, now that's all we're going to need for our pencil. So I'd like you to put your pencil away and pick up your Sharpie again. Okay, let me show you on the tomato part first. On these, I think this is even easier than the cursive. So all you're going to do is take your Sharpie, and you are simply doing a block around your thin letter. Isn't that easy? I love playing around with creative lettering. And any kind of lettering I'm doing, whether it's just plain old block or it's really curvy or fancy, I always start out with a pencil and I write my letters nice space apart, just normal, and then you go back and you add the fancy stuff. That way you know, like, you'll have enough room and they're gonna fit, and you'll know how to trace around them. Okay, so we've got our tomato, And now let's do our soup. On the soup, these little edges on some of these letters besides the O, those are called serifs, and it just means they go out. So what you do is 2 little lines like that on the edge of any of these ends. So the O is a full circle, so it doesn't have it, but the U, we have 2 ends. So we're gonna go like this, and like this. And on the P, it kind of ends right there and down here. Okay, now we're gonna trace around just like we did with tomato, but we're gonna incorporate these serifs. So I'm gonna just go straight across that serif. I'm gonna come around my S. And I'm gonna come around this way and connect that serif. Then I've got my block letter with a serif. Now on the O, I love how this kind of goes sideways. So if that's something you want to do, that's kind of fun. So we'll do that, and then we'll just kind of trace the O just a little bit sideways like that. And for the U, there's our serifs, and now we're just tracing around our pencil line for the U. Okay, and then the P, we've got those. And let's just pop that in there. Okay, there we go. We've got tomato and soup. And now for Campbell's, it's just a little bit fancier, kind of like cursive. So what we need to do is hook the letters together a little bit. So on this first one, on the C, start over here, bring a loop, okay, and stop, and then come here. So I'm gonna make this just a little bit thicker and around. Now, if that was tricky, you can rewind and watch that one more time. Okay, now I am just going to make, when I go around this time, I'm just making each one just a little bit fancier. So it's gonna connect and curve up like that. So each time I'm doing my block letter, I'm just curving into the next one. So I'll come around here, and this one kind of curves right here into the B. So come around the B and back up. And then we'll just put a little loop in there and there. And then we come around to the E. That's a tricky E. So let me draw that one more time. We come around, little bit in and out. And then just make it thicker on a couple edges. Okay, now our L's, instead of having loops, they're just thicker with a flick at the bottom. So we're going right around our L's, and we're just doing that little flick, that little tail. We put in our comma. And this S, even though I drew a regular S, this is more of a cursive S. So I am just going to go like that with the tail and fill that in. Okay, now the only other thing I need to do is the middle. And like I said, I want you to be able to do whatever you want there. And I am just gonna draw those lines. And I'm gonna draw around this pencil line, and I'm gonna do it a double line so that I remember to color that in. It's gonna be nice to have a little bit of color there for, especially because we can do our complementary colors. And then down here at the bottom, if you want to do a fleur-de-lis, you would draw kind of a top and a bottom going off to the left and the right. And then we've got this that comes up and down. So that's the regular fleur-de-lis. And if you want to be really careful and draw those across the bottom, you can. You could even do kind of a simplified version like that across the bottom. Or like I said, you could do any other pattern that you wanted. So I'm going to let you decide what pattern you want to do there. And once you feel like you've got all of your highlights colored in, you've got all of your letters traced, you've done the middle, then meet me back here and I will show you how to color it in using watercolor pencils.